Right. Good morning. Do you hear me? Good
Can hear,
morning.
sir. Good morning.
Okay. Right. So where do we start? Stop last week. We finished the leasing standard, and have we start the company accounts? Now, have we start this company financial statement in your batch? Or I mean, yeah, we have uploaded the company account first material also. So where are we? LKS SLFR 16 lease. Have we finished the lease? Yes. කාටද මතක අපි අන්තිමට ගිය සති නතර කරපු දැන්? right අපි leasing පටන් ගත්තා ලෙස්සීගේ සහ ලෙසෝගේ මේ දෙකම ඉවර කරාද කම්පැනි පටන් ගත්තද නැත්නම් අදද කම්පැනි පටන් ගන්න තියෙන්නේ? yes. Can someone reply?
කම්පැනි ගාන පටන් ගත්තද?
පළවෙනි එක අපි හැදුවද? පළවෙනි එක හැදුවා නේ ඒ කියන්නේ.
ඔව් හැදුවා.
right. එහෙනම් ඔයාලගෙත් තියෙන්නේ දෙවෙනි activity එකකින් යන්න. right. එහෙනම් අපි යමු activity 2 එකට. The trial balance of Galaxy as at 31st March 2023 is given below. Financial asset, right of use asset, land, building, motor vehicle, office equipment, ordinary shares, retained earning, revaluation reserve, cost of sales, accumulated depreciation, provision for income tax, inventory, cash at bank and in hand, trade receivable, trade payable. Debenture, distribution expenses, admin expenses, financial asset, other expenses, other income, income tax paid, dividend paid for ordinary shares. Right? We have first go through the trial balance so we can get an idea the type of asset, liability, income, equity items available. Then the following additional information is also provided. Financial asset in the trial balance represent investment in 100,000 ordinary shares at 275 each. So we have the trial balance. $27,500. So 27,500 equal to 100 into 275. The transaction cost of this investment amounted to 500,000 recorded in other expenses. So we can charge transaction cost to P&L if the investment in ordinary shares specified as financial asset at fair value through P&L. Right? So if it is fair value through P&L, then we can charge the transaction cost to P&L as other expense. The market price of the share end of the year given, that you need to adjust. You have to revalue you have to remeasure the financial asset at fair value at end of the year. Company has classified this investment as financial asset at fair value through OCI. So it is OCI investment. So we have to capitalize the 500,000. We can't charge to P&L. And end of the year, you have to remeasure. Remeasure the financial asset at fair value. So that is the adjustment. Then company entered into a lease agreement on 1st April 2022 and obtained right of use of a motor vehicle for a 4-year period. It's a lease. According to the lease, 3.5 million down payment paid. And the initial measurement of lease liability 6.5 million. First installment 2.5 million, including 1.2 million interest. Both down payment and installment paid debited to right of use asset account. So that is wrong. We can debit the down payment and then we have to recognize the lease liability and right of use asset. No other accounting entry was made in this respect. They have not recognized the lease liability and we have not debit that amount to right of use asset. And the installment should be debited to the lease liability, not the right of use asset, installment paid. And there is interest that should charge to P&L. They haven't done that. So we have to correctly account for this lease. Then the ownership of the lease motor vehicle is transferred to lessee. So even though lease term is 4 years, ownership transfer, so you can depreciate it over the useful life. And the lease interest applicable for the next year is given 800,000 is interest applicable for the next year. So that we need to classify the lease liability as current and non-current. Then the fourth one, land was revalued first time in a previous year. And now we are revaluing the land for the second time, no accounting entry. So we have to account for the revaluation. Then the office equipment depreciate 20%. And it is revalued for the first time, but no accounting entry made. So two revaluation. One is land revaluation for the second time and office equipment revaluation for the first time. Then during the addition is given to complete the PP note and the correct depreciation calculation. Then the depreciation rates are given 5% and 10% straight line. So 5% means useful life 20 years. 10% motor vehicle means useful life 10 years. Then trial balance, we have 90,000 accumulated depreciation. The breakup is given. Number 9, the company share capital. You are given the share capital 2 million, issued at 200. So 400,000 share capital. And there's a public issue, 500,000, which is properly accounted. So 2 million shares are there after 500,000 public issue. That means beginning of the year, it should be 1.5 million shares. Then you were given company capitalized retained earnings, made a bonus issue, 1 for every 10 shares held at 25 කියන එක වැරදි. ඇත්තට මේක 250 වෙන්න. At 250. Right? Because other shares are issued at 200. This is 250, not 25. So which is not recorded. So we have to account for the capitalization of reserve bonus issue. Then you are given the income tax liability, total income tax liability for the year. And the amount paid includes 3 million for the last year. So we can identify O under provision for last year and can account for the total tax expense. And we can have the income tax payable end of the year. Then finally, company issued debentures. That's a financial liability. Transaction cost included in other expenses. No transaction cost should debit to the financial liability crediting cash. Then the debenture is will be matured and premium redeemed at a premium. So the effective interest rate 14, the coupon rate 10. However, the interest paid on coupon rate is recorded as finance expense. That is wrong. You have to account this using amortized cost. Right? Interest paid, credit cash and debit financial liability, and effective interest rate. Based on effective interest rate, we have to calculate the interest expense charged to PN. Right. So you are given profit or loss, statement of profit or loss, statement of changes in equity, statement of financial position, and note on PP. Right. Okay. So you can have the format of statement of profit or loss, statement of financial position, same as the last activity. This for exercise 2. Right. මේ ගානේ OCI වර්ග කීපයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අපිට ඉඩ තියන්න පුළුවන් because we have revaluation surplus first time, revaluation first time, second time, and financial asset at fair value through OCI. So OCI line item 3ක් ඉඩ තියන්න වෙනවා අපිට. Right? So can you have the format first? Then we'll take one by one additional information and discuss. So I want all of you to complete the format, right? First, you can have the statement of profit or loss format. Sales, cost of sales, gross profit, other income, distribution, admin, other, finance. Then the profit before tax. Then income tax expense, profit or loss for the year. Then we have other comprehensive income. We can have 3 spaces because we have a revaluation, 2 assets revaluation. Like if one surplus, one deficit, then you have to record them separately, right? And we have a fair value through OCI financial assets. So better to have 3 lines. Then the total comprehensive income. So then we can have the format statement of financial position. The statement of financial position. So we have property, plant and equipment, right of use asset, financial asset at fair value through OCI. Fair value through OCI. Those are non-current asset. Then current asset, we have current inventory, trade receivable, cash and bank. Then we have equity, stated capital, revaluation reserve, retained earning, fair value through OCI reserve. When we have financial asset at fair value through OCI, any fair value gain or loss accumulated in a separate reserve, fair value through OCI reserve. Then we have two non-current liability. One is lease liability. The other one financial liability at amortized cost. That is the debenture. Then we can have the statement of changes in equity. So opening balance and closing balance we can have, right? Normally, you have to keep these spaces empty, right? You can keep about 8-9 line items and have the closing balance, right? So here that I have written the movements that we have identified. Sometimes this may not be available. කියලා අපිට ගාන කියවපු ගමන්ම මේ ඔක්කොම අඳුර ගන්න බැරි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර ඔයාලට තියෙන public issue එකක් තිබුණා, capitalization තිබුණා, profit for the year තියෙනවා. line item කීපයක් කියලා ඉතුරුවට ඉඳ තියාගන්න පුළුවන්. Then the Property, plant and equipment not. Cost or valuation, we have 4 asset categories: land, building, motor vehicle, office equipment. Opening balance, addition, there's a revaluation. When you revalue depreciable asset, we have to transfer accumulated depreciation. We can show a line transfer of accumulated depreciation. Then revaluation, surplus or deficit, and the disposal. And the closing balance. Similarly, you can have it for accumulated depreciation also, right? I want all of you following the activity, right? So take one by one adjustments, right? එහෙම නැතුව ගාන හදලා ඉවර වුණාට පස්සේ මේ ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් එකක් ගහගත්තොත් ඒක වැඩක් නැහැ. Right? You have to follow these adjustments one by one because you will be tested this type of activity for 30 marks in the examination. Right? So අපි දැනට කතා කරලා තියෙන ස්ටෑන්ඩර්ඩ්ස් ටික විතරයි මේ ඇක්ටිවිටීස් වල ඉන්නේ. Right? අපි තව ඉස්සරහට අවසානයේ නැවත ස්ටෑන්ඩර්ඩ්ස් ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි කරලා අපි කතා කරනවා with more standards. We'll discuss company accounts, right? එනිසා මේ company account එකක් හදන්න full set එක financial statement හදන එක ගැන ඔයාලට idea එක තියෙනවා. With the standards. For that you have to make these adjustments one by one. මොකද එහෙම නැතුව හදලා ඉවර වුණාට පස්සේ අවසාන ආන්සර් එක ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් එකක් දාගත්තට උත්තරේ තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඔයාලා දන්නේ නැහැ කොහොමද ඒක ඩෙවලොප් වුනේ කියලා. Right? Okay, right. So I will give you another 2 minutes to have the format. Right. So I think you all have the formats, right? Format of statement of profit or loss and OCI, statement of financial position, statement of changes in equity and PPE note, and finally, we need this working. We need a working for expenses and other income, right? You better have that also, right? The trial balance, we are given the other income, distribution, admin, other, finance. You better take the other income, 21,000, distribution, 25,500, admin, 31,500, other expenses, 4,000, and finance expense, 12,500. Right. So then we can take one by one additional information and we'll make the adjustments. Right. So that is how we should approach for the company account. We have to have all the formats, including the expense working. First, you read the trial balance, then just go through the additional information and identify the what type of adjustment we have to make. That is important to have the format. Then we start taking one by one additional information and make the appropriate adjustment. Right. So we'll take the first additional information. So you're given financial asset in the trial balance represent 100,000 ordinary shares issued at 275. So I will have the financial asset account first. Right. You have the financial asset at fair value through OCI. And the balance is 27,500. This is what given, right? 27,500. And you are given the transaction cost. 500 is recorded in other expenses. But this is fair value through OCI. So we have to first take this transaction cost, and that should be debited to the financial asset account by crediting the other expenses, the transaction cost, right? So I'm taking the transaction cost 500. We debit that into financial asset. And we can go to this expense working. So there we can remove that 500 from the other expenses. Transaction cost at fair value through OCI is the first adjustment. Credit other expense, debit financial asset. Right. Then you are given the year-end market price. Market price of this financial asset 295 into 100. The balance carried forward 29,500. So now you find there's a difference. $1,500. That is the fair value gain, which we should transfer to other comprehensive income. The second entry, you can debit financial asset, credit this gain, the credit side more, right? So we have a gain on financial asset. Fair value increase from 28,000 to 29,500. 1,500 we debit financial asset, credit other comprehensive income. So I'll take the credit entry to other comprehensive income. Change in fair value of financial asset. $1,500. Taken to other comprehensive income. Right. So we completed the first additional information, right? This is done. Second one about the lease. So we better have a working for lease. We can have lease asset account, right of use asset, and the lease liability. I'll take this as right of use asset. Right of use asset and the lease liability. And we have a right of use asset balance. Trial balance. We have right of use asset. Now we got this one. 6,000. Right of use asset 6,000. The given balance. And the additional information says $3.5 million paid down payment. Initial measurement of lease liability 6.5 million, but they have not recorded it. So no lease liability at the moment. So we can first record this second adjustment I'll make. We had two actually, no? 1 and 2. I'll take this as the third double entry. Lease liability credit. Right of use asset debit. How much? 6,500. 6,500. Right? Lease liability credit. Right of use asset debit. The value of initial measurement of lease liability, which has not been recorded yet. Then the first installment 2,500 paid, which is debited to right of use asset account. Now this is wrong. The first installment should be debited to lease liability account. So it is erroneously recorded in right of use asset. So you transfer this into lease liability, first installment. Right? First installment, they have erroneously debited to the right of use asset. So credit there and debit the lease liability, first installment, 2005. Then when you balance the right of use asset account, you will get the correct right of use asset balance, 10,000. That 10,000 consists of down payment 3,500 plus initial measurement of lease liability 6,500. ඒ දෙකේ එකතුවෙන් 3,500 down payment එකයි 6,500 lease liability එකයි එකතු වුණාම 10,000 එන්න ඕන asset එක. Then this 2,500 is the installment. You can't reduce the liability by installment. The installment includes the interest. So the fifth journal entry, we remove the interest. Charge it into P&L. Interest. first installment. කලින් ගත්ත installment එක lease rental එක නැත්තම් මේ තියෙන lease interest එක මේ installment එක ඇතුලේ නැත්තම් rental එක ඇතුලේ තියෙන interest එක 1800. You have to credit lease liability, debit finance expense. Credit lease liability, debit finance expense. So we can move to the expense working. Then in first any journal entry. The interest on lease. Fifth journal entry. Credit lease liability, debit finance expense. Right. Then now we can complete the lease liability balance. So lease liability credit side 7,700 can have the balance carried forward. So the carried forward balance 5,200. Then now this right of use asset we need to depreciate. And the lease term 4 years. End of the lease term, ownership transfer to lessee. Lease term 4 years. End of the lease term, ownership transfer to lessee. That means we can depreciate this asset over the useful life. So you are given motor vehicle depreciate 10% per annum, right? Depreciation rate එක දීලා තියෙනවා. That is based on the normal useful life 10 years. So even this right of use asset motor vehicle we can depreciate over the 10% per annum or the over 10-year period. So 10,000 is the 10,000 is the value. So you can take 10% of 10,000. Depreciation of right of use asset 1,000. Right? Depreciation of right of use asset 1,000. Take this is number 6. Journal entry number 6. So you have to credit this into the accumulated depreciation. So you can show the debit expense, credit accumulated depreciation right of use. So we can show that in the statement of financial position. Right of use asset can value this 10,000 minus 1,000, 9,000. Mechanic entry කාවේ accumulated depreciation, right? And actually I missed the financial asset. We have already calculated the balance in the previous adjustment, 29,500. You could have taken that also. The balance already have calculate kara. First additional information, financial asset. Right. So we have completed the first two adjustments. Additional information number 1 and 2. 1, 2, and 3 actually. Now third one, you are given this interest. So we have one more part. Now we had the lease liability. The lease liability account, we have a balance of 5,200. Now this balance 5,200 we have to divide between current and non-current. So how much is the current liability? How much is the non-current liability? So the lease liability current portion, we can easily find the installment, annual installment 5,200. From that you leave out 800 interest. So the current lease liability is 1,700. Then the lease liability non-current, from the total lease liability 5,200 to deduct this current portion 1,700. So balance becomes 3,500, which is the non-current. So this is just the classification. Current non-current classification of lease liability. මුළු lease liability එක 5,200යි. ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දේ installment එක 2,500යි. 2,500 installment එකෙන් 800ක් interest. ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දේ settle වෙනවා 1,700. මුළු liability එක 5,200යි. ඒක 1,700 අඩු කරපුවාම 3,500ක් non-current. So we can go to the statement of financial position. So we can show the lease liability, current and non-current. 3,500 and 1,700. Lease liability divide between current and non-current. Right. Then we need to take the property, plant and equipment. Right. Just go through the property, plant and equipment information. මොකද මේ ටික අපිට පොදුවේ අරගෙන එකින් එක adjust කරන්න වෙන්නේ. මේවා interrelated. I'll give you 5 minutes. Try to attempt Any possible adjustment of PP? right? Now there are some new adjustments than the last week activity, but some of the adjustment you should have, if you attempt, you could have been complete. So I'll take one by one and explain. The land was revalued for the first time earlier. So entire revaluation reserve representing the trial balance created due to this revaluation. Okay. So we can go to the revaluation reserve 13,500. Right. So you can even take this 13,500 as revaluation reserve opening balance in the statement of changes in equity. So this is the previous year revaluation. We have a balance 13,500. And we have the land balance 150,000. Now you are told the revalued land for 145,000. That means second time revaluation, we have a deficit of 5,000. The land balance 150,000. Now we revalued for 145,000. So we have a 5,000 deficit. If this is first time revaluation, this revaluation deficit we charge to P&L. But this is the second time revaluation. Previously 13,500 surplus create. So now this 5,000 deficit is a reversal of previously created surplus. ඒ කලින් 13,500ක surplus එකක් තියෙනවා, ඒක reserve වල දැන් තියෙනවා. දැන් 150 145ට 5 million වලින් අඩු වෙනවා. Now that should be recorded in other comprehensive income. Right? So දැන් අපි journal entries 6ක් ගියා. 7 වෙනි එක ඕනනම් මෙතන දාන්න පුළුවන්. Decrease in revaluation surplus by 5,000. එක 7 වෙනි entry එක. මේ 1,500 ආපු එක කෙතන අපිට වෙන්නේ 1,500 ආවේ දෙවෙනි journal entry එක. I'm just writing these numbers for your reference, right? So ඔයාලට පේනවා double entry එක කොහොමද ගියේ every adjustment. Change in fair value of financial asset. And decrease in revaluation surplus 5,000. මම මේකේ අනිත් entry එක asset එක පෙන්නන්නේ නැහැ, right? asset account එක හැදුවා නම් asset එකට credit වෙනවා. debit වෙනවා OCI. Other impact go to the asset, land account. So we can show this movement in the PP note also. On the land, we have 150,000 balance. Since there is no addition or disposal of the land, we can show the opening balance of land 150. Lands are not depreciated. So no transfer of the depreciation. Now revaluation deficit. Deduct and you get the closing balance. 145. Revaluation deficit. Surplus or deficit. Right? දෙකම අපිට පෙන්නන්න පුළුවන්. Revaluation deficit. Then office equipment purchased in 1st April 2021, all the office equipment and depreciated 20% per annum. Office equipment revalued first time for 72 million on 31st March 2022. And no addition or disposal of office equipment. So office equipment, we have 100,000 balance. And accumulated depreciation of office equipment 20. So we can even have all these three accumulated depreciation opening balances to PP note. These are given balances. Then now office equipment, 100,000 is the cost beginning of the year, as no addition, no disposal. Now you can calculate the current year depreciation, right? මේ අවුරුද්දේ depreciation අපිට පෙන්වන්න පුළුවන්, which should be 100,000 into 20%, 2,000. Depreciation of office equipment 20,000. 20%. එහෙනම් අපිට ඕකේ double entry පෙන්වන්න පුළුවන් depreciation of office equipment. Right. So we had number 7, revaluation. Now this is the 8th journal entry. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation. Right. 20,000. Then there's a revaluation. Before revaluation, you have to transfer entire depreciation. Right? ඒක මම වෙනම journal entry පෙන්නන්න ඒක මේ note එකේම පෙන්නලා තියෙන්නේ. Accumulated depreciation debit, office equipment credit. Nominee journal entry. Right? So PP note එකේ වෙන සටහන හරහා අපි පෙන්නලා තියෙන්නේ adjustment එක. So we have to remove the 40,000, the depreciation up to now, and deduct it, credit it into the motor vehicle account. 40,000. Transfer of accumulated depreciation. Debit accumulated depreciation office equipment, credit office equipment asset account. Now you revalue this for, now the carrying amount is 60,000. Revalued for 72,000. So we have a revaluation surplus. That revaluation surplus, a surplus sector, right? 12,000 revaluation surplus. 10th entry. Debit office equipment, then it becomes 72,000. ඕනනම් අපිට office equipment account එකකුත් හදාන්න පුළුවන්, right? And credit it into other comprehensive income. මම මෙතන පෙන්නන නිසා මම ආයි account එක හදන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. Number 10 journal entry එක. Asset debit, OCI credit. Increasing revaluation surplus. One can even show here net effect 7,000. Right? මෙතන 7,000 පෙන්නන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් මේ asset classes දෙකක් නිසා අපි මේ දෙක වෙන වෙනම පෙන්නනවා. මොකද මෙතන change in revaluation surplus කියලා net effect එක 7,000 you can disclose. Right. Then we have two additions. Building and motor vehicle additions which are properly accounted. So you can complete PP note. Building closing balance, building and motor vehicle. Closing balance given in the trial balance. 200,000 and 100,000. $200 and $150. Then during the addition, which is properly accounted, you can take those two additions to the PP note. Building 40,000, motor vehicle 25,000. So we can calculate the opening balance. 160 and 125. You can have the total. Now you know the additions. The depreciation, you have to calculate 1st October building addition. Motor vehicle 1st January. Now you can calculate the depreciation. Opening balance building for a full year, 40,000 for 6 months. And motor vehicle opening balance full year 10%, 25,000 addition for the 3 months. Can you calculate the depreciation? Right, the depreciation calculation, you can have depreciation of building. So 160 into 5% full year plus 40 into 5%, 12 months, 6 months. කොමනෙන්නේ? So 160,000 වලින් 5% ගත්තාම අපිට එනවා 8,000. 40,000 වලින් 5% 2,000. 6 months 1,000. Altogether 8 plus 1, 9,000. දැන්ට අපි ජනරල් එන්ට්‍රීස් 10ක් ලිව්වා. මේක 11 කියලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. debit expense, credit depreciation, accumulated depreciation building 9,000. Then the depreciation motor vehicle. So we can have the motor vehicle opening balance 125 million into 10% full year plus 25 into 10% into 3 months. මාස 3යි. So it's 13,125. 13,125 එන්නේ 125 10% plus 25 10% for 3 months. 125,000 10%, 12,500. Then 25,000 10%, 2,500. Take it for 3 months, 625. So altogether 13,625. You can see that is the journal entry number 12. So basically, we have completed the PP related adjustments. So now we can complete the PP note. This activity no disposal, but usually we show that even though there is no disposal, we have to show that disposal movement. And finally, we can have the closing balance of accumulated depreciation. And we can complete this. The carrying amount 474,875 PP note. So this carrying amount of property, plant and equipment, this is 31st March 2023. So you can take this into the statement of financial position. So in the statement of financial position, property, plant and equipment, you can show this balance. $474,875. Right. Then we have two more additional information. We have a share issue. The stated capital movement. Opening balance 2,000 shares at 200. And during the year, 500 share issue made at 200. That means which is properly accounted. So that means what is the correct opening balance? Should be 1,500 into 200. Correct opening balance. Ordinary share capital, correct opening balance should be 300,000. Common 300,000 આવે 1,500 into 200. And there's a public issue 500 into 200. Now that is how the 400,000 trial balance, the trial balance stated capital shown 400,000 created. Opening balance plus public issue. However, there is unrecorded capitalization of reserve. So the capitalization of reserve 1 for every 10 shares held at 250. So you can take number of shares 1,500. 1,500 into 1/10. Right? Don't calculation එක විදිහට පෙන්නන්නත් පුළුවන්. Capitalization of reserve or you call bonus issue. So which is 1,500 shares, 1 out of 10, issue price 250. This is a new journal entry we need to pass. They have not accounted for it. So 1,500 into 1/10 to 250. 37,500 is the value of capitalization of reserve or bonus issue. 37,500. right? So we can record this 37,500. So we can show this in the, we had 12 journal entries. Number 13, ඒක මම මෙතනම දානවා, right? මොකද මේකේ double entry කියන්නේ stated capital credit, retained earning debit. So the retained earning trial balance, we can have the retained earning opening balance given in the trial balance. $75,500. $75,500. Then the capitalization of reserve, 37,500. Debit stated, credit stated capital by debiting retained earning. So retained earning reduce, stated capital increase. So we calculate this on a method me penla තියෙන එක by 1,500, 110 to 250. The value. How do we get that? $37,500 retained earning debit. So you deduct from the retained earning, increase the stated capital. Then the income tax, total income tax liability, 8,200. Income tax paid include 3,000 for the last year, right? මේක සරලව හදන්නත් පුළුවන්, right? අපි simple journal entries වලින් ගියොත් මම ඒකට accounts දෙක හදා ගන්නවා, right? Make it more, right? So we can take income tax expense account and income tax liability account. So දැනට income tax expense account එක ගත්තොත් income tax expense, right? මම expense account එකට ගන්නවා දැනට paid balance එක. Given in the trial balance, income tax paid, so we have tax paid 7,500 and the tax provision, tax liability 3,500, right? So I'll take these two accounts. Income tax expense, that you know 7,500 tax paid. And provision for income tax, we have the balance 3,500. Right? That all balances the trial balance එකේ තියෙනවා. And we have paid 3,000 for the last year, and which is included in the current year tax expense. Now that is wrong. The 3,000 paid for the last year. ඔය 3,000 හරිනම් යන්න ඕනේ provision එකට. Right? අපි ඒක අයින් කරමු දැන්. දැන් අපි ගත්තන entries 13ක්. Right? මම 14th කියලා පෙන්නනවා. Credit tax expense, debit, provision for income tax, 3,000. This is what we paid for the last year. Income tax expense again, and again. Then, how much is the amount payable for this year? Now, total income tax liability for the year 8,200. Of that, we have paid only 4,500 because tax paid includes 7,500. That include 3,000 paid for the last year. So when you remove that, you can find the tax payable for the current year. Debit income tax expense from 8,200, we have paid 4,500 for current year. Right? How we got 4,500? Here 7,500 paid, from that 3,000 for the last year. So this year payment is 4,500. So 8,200 minus 4,500, 3,700 payable. That is income tax, provision for income tax, and provision for income tax payable. Right? Provision for income tax. 3,700. Then we had this 3,500 paid only 3,000. The balance 500 is last year over provision. So when you have over provision, that should credit to income tax expense. Over provision 500 from provision for income tax, over provision 500. So finally, when you balance this tax expense account, 11,200, 11,200, you can charge to P&L tax expense. Number 17. $7,700 P&L. But we charge to P&L. And provision for income tax account, you balance, you can carry forward the current year payable balance. Can have the balance carried forward. $3,700. Right. So with this working, we can complete the income tax adjustment. So I'll take the 7,700 tax expense. Income tax expense for the year 7,700. The make ඕන සරලව බලන්න පුළුවන්. Total tax liability 8,200. Last year over provision 500 අඩු වුණාම ඉන්නේ 7,700. Then the income tax payable, we have already calculated, that is income tax payable 7,300, right? Rekave 8,200 minus 4,500 paid. We have already calculated it. Tax payable. So we have the last additional information, the last adjustment. That is the financial liability debenture. So it's easy when you prepare the debenture account, right? Take this, this one. This is financial liability debenture. The balance of the debenture accounts given in the trial balance. We have a debenture balance of 50,000. 50,000 balance. Right, 50,000 balance. And you are told the transaction cost 650 included in other expenses. So the transaction cost of financial liability should be debited to financial liability by crediting cash. At the moment, it is included in other expenses. So number 18, you can remove this. Journal entry number 18. You can take this the transaction cost, which is included in other expenses. So you can remove it from other expenses and taken to the, you can credit this into, debit this into debenture account. The other expenses credit වෙන්න ඕනේ. අඩු වෙනවා දැනට තියෙන other expenses වලින් 650. And debit this into financial liability account. Transaction cost on debenture issue. Number 18, the transaction cost 650. Then the interest paid under coupon rate is recorded as finance expense. That is wrong. The interest paid should credit cash and debit financial liability account. Right? අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත amortized cost එකට financial liability එකට තමයි interest paid එක debit වෙන්න ඕනේ. So they have erroneously debit that into the finance expense. So the coupon interest rate 10%, the journal entry number 19, 5,000 finance expense credit, debit the financial liability. Interest paid. ගෙවපු interest එක 5,000. Right. Then the correct finance expense is the interest expense using the effective interest rate. So you can calculate it 50,000 minus 650. The opening balance එක වෙන්නේ 50,000. The cash collected by debenture issue minus the transaction cost. Then multiplied by 14%, 6,909. that we have to debit finance cost and credit the debenture account. So we can have this debenture account, credit the 20th entry, interest expense. Interest expense. We have taken 6,909. Now when you balance this, you can have the carried forward balance. 51,259. $51,259, the balance of financial liability debenture. Right? So we can have this financial liability, the statement of financial position. Under non-current liability, we can take this balance. $51,259. Debenture. So we have considered all the additional information. We have considered all the additional information. So you can take the remaining trial balance figures. Sales, cost of sales, you can take 270 and 186. Right, we can take them, the items given in the trial balance as it is we are taking. Sales, cost of sales. Okay, subtotal එකක් තියෙනවා එතකොට gross profit එක. Just a subtotal. Then inventory, cash, trade receivable, current asset. Can just take these current asset from the trial balance. Given balance as it is we can take. Inventory 23,500. Trade receivable 45,500. Cash and cash equivalent 4,500. Then the trade payable 58,500 trade payable current liability. Trade payable 58,500. Then we have already taken these distribution, admin, finance, other expenses taken to our working, other income taken. Only the last item, the dividend. 8,000 dividend paid, you can show that in the statement of changes in equity, dividend paid taken from the trial balance. 8,000. Deduct from the retained earning. Dividend. Now you can total these expenses, no? Expense total එක අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන්. Other income වලට adjustment මුකුත් ආවේ නැහැ. Distribution we had only the motor vehicle අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් දාන්නේ distribution වලටනේ. Shall we take it? Make a known motor vehicle method at the Let's remove from the admin. Right. Motor vehicle depreciation you can take to the distribution. We can assume that it is used for the distribution purpose. So then you can take these expenses now to the statement of profit or loss. Right? මේ total ටික එහෙමම ගන්න පුළුවන්. So then you can have the calculated figure profit before tax. Here we have a loss before tax. Right? Profit before tax minus. But still it is possible to pay income tax because that is the income tax is paid based on the tax profit. Accounting loss එකක් තිබ්බට tax profit එකක් තිබ්බට tax ගෙවන්නත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. So finally, you can have the total comprehensive income. So this is the statement of profit or loss and OCI. Statement of profit or loss and OCI. So then this profit or loss you have to take to the statement of changes in equity. Then three other comprehensive income items also we can show. So profit for the year, we have a loss. Right? Profit for the year minus. Change in revaluation surplus. You can have the net result here, 7,000. 12,000 increase, 5,000 decrease. And fair value gain in financial asset. Can take it 1,500. So now you can have the totals. And finish the statement of changes in equity. Right? Finish the statement of changes in equity. So now you can take these balances from statement of changes in equity to the statement of financial position. So then you can have the total. So it tally for $586,875. 586,875. The statement of financial position tally. So we had two company financial statements, complete questions, right? And so then I'm moving to the consolidated financial statement after the break, right? So because we have two more company financial statement, I will take after completing other standards also, because we can have adjustments with few more standards, right? So you have the chat. Okay. So we'll take a short break of say 15 minutes, and continue the discussion after the break. So I was made a request about further instruction about the presentation. That also will take after the break, right? Presentation එක ගැනත් අහලා තිබුණා, right? ඒකත් අපි discuss කරමු. So we'll take a 15 minutes break, right? 10:25 will start at 10:40 and continue with a new topic, consolidated financial statement. Okay, so we'll start the consolidated financial statement first. So the consolidated financial statements also we call group financial statement. So the consolidated financial statements are defined financial statement of a group in which assets, liability, equity, income, expense, cash flows of the parent and subsidiary presented as those of single economic entity. So it say the financial statement of a group. Consolidated financial statement means financial statement of a group. So what's a group? Group means parent and subsidiary. Then what is parent? Parent is an entity that control one or more other entity. The subsidiary is the entity that is controlled by another entity. So to understand this consolidated financial statement, we can use a diagram here. Right? So it's like this. If I take two entities, A or Alpha PLC, and we have another entity, say Beta PLC, and Alpha acquired say Alpha made an investment invest rupees 100 million, right? Alpha invest rupees 100 million. With this 100 million investment, assume that they acquire 80% of ordinary shares, right? Ordinary shares. 80% of ordinary share capital of Beta. When one company acquire majority of ordinary shares of another entity, with that, they can obtain control over other entity. With this 80% ownership, alpha now get control over beta because they own 80% of ordinary shares. 80%. It need not necessarily 80%. If it is more than 50%, then now in this case we can identify two parties. This is investor. Alpha is investor. Beta we can call investee. Investee. Alpha අපි කියනවා investor කියලා. Beta කියනවා investee කියලා. Any company which invests in another company, you find investor, investee. Now, when one entity controls another entity, this investor is named as parent. Now we call this investor parent. And now we call this investee subsidiary. Right? Now the parent subsidiary relationship arises when investor can control investee. Investor can control investee, then the parent subsidiary relationship arises. So parent subsidiary relationship arises when investor can control over the investee. Right? So then when you consider parent subsidiary together, we call it is a group. When you consider parent subsidiary together, both parent subsidiary, we call this is a group. Right? So then for the group, the financial statement prepared for the group we call consolidated financial statement. Consolidated financial statements prepared by the group. Okay, so you can have this diagram. Now I think you can understand the concepts. What is parent? Entity that control another entity. Normally, when an entity acquire more than 50% ownership, they can easily appoint the majority of the director board. Now, for an example, if the beta having 10 directors, 9 out of 10 board of directors are appointed by the main shareholder alpha. So all the policy decisions of alpha are taken by the policy decision of beta taken by these board of directors. So that is the mechanism that alpha used to control beta. Right? So control is the key word here. The mostly used mechanism to acquire control is acquiring majority of ordinary shares. Because when a company acquire majority of ordinary shares, they can appoint majority of the board of directors. So the decision of the beta taken by those directors appointed by alpha. Then we identify alpha the investor as parent, beta the investor as subsidiary, investee as subsidiary. So this parent subsidiary relationship arise because alpha can control beta. Right? Alpha to beta control කරන්න පුළුවන් නිසා තමයි මේ parent subsidiary relationship එක දැන් ඇති වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Because alpha can control beta. Then usually the alpha prepare their financial statements. No? Financial statement of alpha. Parent prepare their own financial statement. Right? Financial statements of alpha. Then beta prepare financial statements of beta. In the consolidated financial statements, what happened there? You take financial statement of alpha and financial statement of beta combined. And we have to make some adjustment for that, plus or minus adjustment. With that, we prepared set of financial statement that show parent subsidiary together as a single economic entity. Parent ගේ subsidiary දෙගොල්ලන්ගේම financial statement එකතු කරලා හදන එකට කියනවා group financial statements කියලා. Right. Then about your group presentation, right? Our initial plan to held it on 11th, our usual day. The last week I told you I will try to take the Saturday morning financial business finance session, right? But now we have come into a situation that is also not possible, because actually Saturday morning my other lecture, that also I have fixed the presentation, right? මම ඔයාලට කිව්වේ ඒක වෙනස් කරලා ගන්නම් කියලා. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ presentation fix වෙලා තියෙන. ඒතකොට ඒක වෙනස් කරන්න වෙන්නේ නැහැ. නිසා next Saturday morning presentation එකට ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා. right? එහෙම වුණොත් ඇත්තටම අපිට presentation එක shift කරන්න වෙනවා. මොකද මම 18th මගේ participant එක doubt. Right? 16, 17, 18 we start A-level accounting paper marking, so that chief examiner's meeting will be conducted during those days. So then I think you will be happy that we have to shift it to 25th then. Right? ටිකක් පරක්කු වැඩි ඇත්තටම. Right? But we have no issue on 25th, no. Right? මේ 11th වල ඔයාලගේ මේ SAP එකේ function එක නිසා තමයි දැන් අපිට මේ arrangement එකට යන්න වෙන්නේ. So මට 18th possibility එකක් තියෙනවා මම lecture එක ගන්න, but it is doubt. Right? ඒ නිසා මම ඒක fix කරන්නේ නැහැ. මම 25th වලට shift කරනවා. And now your topics are allocated. ඊළඟ මම මේකේ template එකක් දාන්නම්, group presentation templates. Right, this is the group presentation template. That means your slides. The first slide, you can have the topic and the group number. Second slide, group members. So you have to arrange these group members in the order of presentation, right? දැන් අපි හිතමු ඔයාලගේ group එකේ ඉන්න දැන් ඔයාලා මේ දුන්න list එක තියෙනවනේ. Here we have the group list. So it is not necessarily that the same order you should do the presentation, right? දැන් උදාහරණයක් ගත්තොත් පළවෙනි group එකේ පළවෙනියට නම තියෙන්නේ රත්නායක මේ ලිස්ට් එකේ තියෙන එකට. හැබැයි පළවෙනි ප්‍රසන්ටර් අපි හිතමු පස්වෙනියා කියලා. Then here you have to type the fifth one name here as the first presenter, his registration number and the number of slides he is going to present. Right? Your presentation slides count from the fourth slide because first slide is the topic, second slide group members, third slide content. So the first presenter can take around 30 seconds, right? Just to show this is our topic and no need to explain one by one. These are our group members, right? Slide එක දැම්ම එච්චරයි. No need to introduce. And then the content side, you can show this is the content. Fourth slide onward, you have start the introduction, right? Borrowing cost standard. So එතන ඉඳලා තමයි count වෙන්නේ presentation එක. So each and every person is allocated we can allocate like maximum 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes for one person, right? විනාඩි 4ක් 5ක් අතර කාලයක් කෙනෙක්ට ගන්න පුළුවන්. So one group is allocated 25 to 30 minutes for the presentation and you have to be very strict about the presentation time, right? So 5 දෙනා ඉන්න group එකකට උපරිම විනාඩි 25යි යන්න පුළුවන්. right? 6 දෙනෙක් ඉන්න group එකකට විනාඩි 30කට යන්න පුළුවන්. අර ගොල්ලන්ට විනාඩි 20 25 මේගොල්ලන්ට විනාඩි 25ක් 30ක් වගේ යන්න පුළුවන් 6 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා group number 5 වල. right? Right. So the presentation, if you are using examples, අපි දැන් calculations use කරනවා කියලා borrowing cost, you may use some calculation. So then you can have the calculation, but the answer also should be bring to the slide. right? So ගානක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒකේ answer එකත් explain කරන්න පුළුවන් විදිහට slide එකට ගෙනත් තියෙනවා. Don't fill the slides with full of text, right? For an example, you may have few slides, few definitions. එක slide එක වගේ තියෙන්න පුළුවන් එක දෙක පොඩ්ඩක් definition තියෙනවා. මොකද definition අපිට අයින් කරන්න බැරි නිසා. හැබැයි පුළුවන් හැම වෙලාවෙම ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේක diagram එකක් විදිහට tables වල pictures, diagrams, tables, you could have used for this. Right? Borrowing cost, related party, impairment, intangible, investment property, SLFRS for SME. Right. මම නිකන් උදාහරණයකට ගත්තොත් some of the slides, presentation slides used by students. So right. The contents ගත්තොත් මේ වගේ ඔයාලට content slide එකක් දාන්න පුළුවන්. right. මේ වගේ පෙන්වන්න පුළුවන් group list එක. දැන් මේකේ නම් නැහැ මේ slide number එක. දැන් ඔයාලගේ slide numbers උත් තියෙනවා. එන පළවෙනියා present කරන්නේ slide number කීයේ ඉඳලා කීයටද? ඒකටත් column එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකත් පෙන්වන්න. right. the slides මේ වගේ clear වෙන්න ඕනේ. right. text ගොඩාක් තියෙන්න බෑ. right. මේ ප්‍රමාණය text තිබුණාට කමක් නැහැ. right. මෙන්න මේ වගේ pic diagrams. right. පුළුවන් හැම වෙලාවෙම මෙන්න මේ වගේ diagrams use කරන්න. without just having text. right. මේ වගේ diagrams. right. ඊළඟට tables use කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් හොඳයි. දැන් මේකේ text ටිකක් වැඩි. තව හොඳ presentation එකක් මම ඔයාලට දෙන්නම්. right. ඔයාලට තියෙන්නේ borrowing cost, related party, impairment, intangible asset, investment property, SLFRS or SME. හරි. right. එතකොට මේක ඇත්තටම මේ financial reporting වලම right ප්‍රසකරු presentation එකක් SLFRS 10 වලට දුන්න presentation එකක. right. මේක හොඳයි presentation එක ගත්තාම. right. මේකෙත් ඒගොල්ලෝ පොඩි වෙනසක් කරලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි පැහැදිලිව තියෙනවා. right. මේ slide number 4 5 8 9 10 11 14 15. දැන් මේකේ තියෙන එක weakness එකක් තමයි සමහර අය එක slide එකයි present කරලා තියෙන්නේ. right. so that is not good. හැම වෙලේම මොකද when you are just showing one slide and try to speak 5 minutes, that's difficult to keep the audience. right. එනිසා point form එකේ slide කීපයක් හදා ගන්න ඕනේ තමන් present කරන ප්‍රමාණය. මේකේ formatting හොඳයි. මේක right ලස්සනට format කරු presentation එකක්. right. production objective. දැන් බලන්න මෙතන background එක මේ diagram එකකින් explain වෙන්නේ. right. pictures use කරලා තියෙනවා. right. අර full text දානවා වෙනකොට මෙන්න මේ වගේ. right. you can see you can put some effort. right. දැන් මේ slide එක summarize form එකේ තියෙන්නේ. right. slide එක සම්පූර්ණ text වලින් fill කරලා නැහැ. right. දැන් මෙතන ගත්තත් එහෙමයි. have a diagram. right. this is a overall good presentation slides. right. text විතරක් තියෙනවා නම් මෙන්න මේ වගේ එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ බොහොම ටිකයි font එක කියවන්න පුළුවන්. right. it's overall good presentation. මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඒ වගේ meanwhile if you have any question you can ask. then mail case 1 වලින් කරපු presentation එක. Right. දැන් මෙන්න මේකේ තියෙනවා මේ slide number 4 to 6 7 to 8 9 10 මේ ලොකු group එකක් members ලා ගොඩක් හිටපු batch එකක. Right. ඒතර ඒගොල්ලෝ contents, right, introduction. You see this slides are not full of text and which is formatted very well. Right. මේ headings ටික ගත්තොත් ඔක්කොම එකම font එකකින් යන්නේ. Right. You see that එකම size එකේ, so you see well formatted slides, right? මේ වගේ definition එකක් දාන්න වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි හැම තැනම පුළුවන් හැම වෙලාවෙම diagram එකක්, picture එකක්, table එකක් use කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? මේ වගේ point form වලින් list කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? case 1 වල ටිකක් අමාරුයි මේ diagram වගේ ඒවා use කරන්න. නමුත් සමහර ඒ වගේ බොහොම ලේසියෙන් ඇත්තටම මේක කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Any question you want to raise? So the presentation is now rescheduled to the 18th, නෙමෙයි අපිට එන්නේ 25th February. Right. So now we can understand these definitions. The consolidated financial statements are financial statement of a group in which asset, liability, equity, income, expense, cash flows of parent and subsidiaries are presented as those of a single economic entity. Parents are subsidiary කියන්නේ වෙනම entities දෙකක්. මේ entity දෙකේ financial statements හදනවා. තනි entity එකක වගේ. So we called it consolidated financial statements of a group. Group means parent and its subsidiaries. Parent is the entity that is that control one or more entity. තව ආයතන control කරනවා නම් අපි යාට කියනවා parent කියලා. Subsidiary is an entity that is controlled by another entity. Then there's a term called non-controlling interest, equity of subsidiary not attributable to shareholders of the parent. Like this. Now in this example, the 80% of the shares of subsidiary belongs to group. So what about balance 20%? So when the shares 80% means out of the total equity 80% belongs to the group. No. Shares වලින් 120ක් group එකට අයිති. එතකොට දැන් මෙතන තියෙනවා 20% of the equity of subsidiary that is not owned by the group. That 20% we have to record as non-controlling interest. මේකට කියනවා NCI, non-controlling interest. Equity of subsidiary not owned by the parent. Parent own 80%. 80% owned by the parent. So balance 20% may be owned by other large number of small shareholders. Their ownership is recorded as non-controlling interest. So in this scenario, Alpha prepare financial statement of Alpha and the consolidated financial statements also prepared by Alpha. Alpha prepare two sets of financial statements. One company individual and other one for the group. The Alpha හදනවා තමන්ගේ financial statement එක. ඊට අමතරව හදනවා group එක consolidated financial statement. So consolidated financial statements are consolidated financial statement means financial statement of a group. So we are adding the parent and subsidiary line by line. Right. Now here the crucial word is the control. When parent control, when investor control investee, the parent subsidiary relationship create, then we have a group. For the group, parent prepare consolidated financial statement also. Right? Any question? Assignment එක ගැන තව මොනවා හරි අහන්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්නත් පුළුවන්. So what is mean by control? The investor control investee when investor expose or has a right for variable return from investment. Now normally when you invest in fixed deposit, your return is fixed. You are getting a fixed interest. When you invest in debenture, your return is fixed. You will get interest. If you invest in preference shares, you will get a fixed dividend. Again, return is fixed. So here we say that variable return. So investor get variable return when you invest in ordinary shares. So one factor is you have to invest in ordinary shares. But when you invest in ordinary shares, right, you invest in 1,000 shares, 2,000 shares, 5,000 shares, you record it as an investment, financial asset. So we discuss in financial instrument, when you invest in ordinary shares of another company, right? So You invest in ordinary shares, like you can classify it as fair value through P&L or fair value through OCA. එතනදී variable return එකක් තමයි හම්බෙන්නේ. So it's not a subsidiary, no control there. The control means, okay, you exposed to a variable return and has ability to affect those return through the power over investee. Investor, power over investee. What is mean by power? The existing right that give current ability to direct the relevant activities. Relevant activities means activities that significantly affect to investees' return. එහෙනම් අපිට මේ දෙක කම්බයින් කරන්න පුළුවන් නේ ඕන. power කියන එක මේ දෙක කම්බයින් කරලා ලියන්න පුළුවන්. relevant activities වෙනුවට මම ලියනවා මේක. existing right that gives current ability to direct the activities of investee that are significantly affect to investors' return. Activities of the investee that are significantly affect to investors' return. These are the activities based on simply these are the activities mainly affected by financial and operating policy decisions, right? ඒ කියන්නේ business එකේ policy decisions වලින් affect වෙන activities තමයි relevant activities කියන්නේ. Who take the policy decisions? Policy decisions are taken by director board. එතකොට මේ activities control කරන්න හැකියාව තියෙනවා කියන්නේ director board එකේ control එක තියෙනවා. So that is why normally when one entity acquire more than 50%, so you can appoint majority of the board, so you will get the control over the investee. Right? So I come to this theoretical part after having some activity. Then අපි යනවා consolidated financial statements වල මුලින්ම consolidated statement of financial position. Where we combine asset liability of parent and subsidiary line by line. Parent ගේ subsidiary financial statement combine කරනවා. So you are adding line by line asset liabilities of parent and subsidiary. Then you have to make necessary adjustment for intra-group transaction. මොකද asset liabilities එකතු කරන්න විතර නම් තියෙන්නේ ඕක අපිට පැයභාග ගිහින් consolidation කතා කරලා ඉවර කරන්න පුළුවන් නේ. parent ගේ assets, parent ගේ PPE, subsidiary PPE එකතු කරනවා. parent receivable, subsidiary receivable. parent trade payable, subsidiary trade payable. parents bank loan, subsidiary bank loan. ඔය වගේ asset liabilities line by line එකතු කරන්න විතර නම් තියෙන්නේ. It is only just adding line by line. Then this is very simple. But consolidated financial statement become complicated because of these adjustments that we need to make. Intra-group adjustment අපිට කරන්න වෙලා තියෙනවා. එහෙනම් අපි මුලින්ම මෙන්න මේ adjustments වලට අදාළ calculations කීපයක් කතා කරලා ඊට පස්සේ consolidation වලට යනවා. Right? Okay. So we'll take this adjustment. මෙතන ඉන්න ප්‍රධාන adjustment එකක් තමයි goodwill, non-controlling interest, group reserve. Right. So we'll take this first activity. Alpha PLC acquired 75% of ordinary shares of Beta for 27 million. on 1st April 2022, when ordinary share capital and retained earning of beta were 18 million and 12 million respectively. Retained earning of alpha and beta 25 million and 18 million. After 1 year, 31st March 2023, 25 and 18. Fair value of non-controlling interest, because alpha acquires 75%. So 25% of the equity of subsidiary owned by other small shareholders. So we record them as non-controlling interest. That value is 6 million. Calculate the following using the fair value method to be incorporated in the consolidated statement of financial position. Goodwill, non-controlling interest, consolidated retained earnings. Right. So අපි ගත්තොත් මුලින්ම මම ගන්නවා මේ අපි ඉන්නේ පළවෙනි එක්සර්සයිස් එකේ. Exercise 1. Right. ඒකේ අපි හොයනවා මුලින්ම goodwill calculation. ඒකට මම ඉඩ තියා ගන්නවා. Then non-controlling interest calculation. Then consolidated retained earning calculation. Right. We'll have these three calculations. So we'll prepare everything in ₹1,000. Normally, you may heard that there's a good intangible asset of a business called goodwill. Business එකේ goodwill එක කීර්ති නාම. This goodwill can be calculated only in the consolidation. Company cannot calculate their own goodwill, right? And take into the account. අපිට තමන්ගේම goodwill එක asset එකක් විදිහට record කරන්න බෑ. But goodwill can be measured in a business combination. Business combination එක goodwill එක calculate කරන්න පුළුවන්. And measure it. Calculate and measure the goodwill in a business combination. Goodwill. Right? එතනදී අපි මුලින්ම ගන්නවා investment. I mean, this activity Parent has acquired 75% of ordinary shares of beta for 27 million, right? 75% අපි ගරන් තියෙනවා. 27 million. But this 27 million we spend and acquire 75%. So if we assume the balance 25% non-controlling interest, if we acquired on this date, fair value of non-controlling interest on 1st April 2022, that remaining 25%, you were given that value. Right? අපි අරන් තියෙන්නේ 175යි. alpha අරන් තියෙනවා 175ක්. ඒ alphaට අයිති නැති 125ක් තිබුණානේ. The fair value of non-controlling interest on that date 6 million. එදාට ඒ ටිකේ fair value එක තිබිලා තියෙනවා 6 million. මේ දෙක ටැලි වෙන්නේ නැහැ සාමාන්‍යයෙන්. මේ වගේ තුන් ගුණයක් නෙමෙයි majority එක වෙන්නේ. මොකද majority එක ගන්නකොට වැඩිපුර ගෙවන්න වෙනවා අනිවාර්යයෙන්. right? මේක හුඟක් වෙලාවට එදාට market price එක base කරලා ගත්ත value එකක් ඔය තියෙන්නේ. right? දැන් අපි බැලුවොත් on the 1st April 2022, Alpha could have acquired the 100%, 33 million, no? 33,000 දුන්නා නම් 75ක් අරන් තියෙනවා. 27ට ඉතිරි ටිකේ market value එක බලපුවාම ඒක 6 million වෙනවා. ඒතර ඔක්කොම the total value the investor willing to pay to acquire beta 33 million. 33 million වලට beta ගේ equity කොච්චරක් වටිනවද? Fair value of equity වලට අපි consolidation වලදී use කරන්නේ net asset කියලා. Net asset means asset minus liabilities. Asset minus liabilities equal equity. So fair value of net asset of subsidiary 100%. ඒක අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන්. දැනට අපිට දීලා තියෙනවා. The share capital Alpha acquires 75% of ordinary shares of beta. When ordinary share capital and retained earning 18 million and 12 million respectively. 18 million share capital. Retained earning 12. Altogether 30 million. So with an investment of 33 million, we could have acquired 30 million worth net asset. So this is the goodwill. හැබැයි මේ goodwill එක එන්නේ acquisition date එකට. Goodwill on acquisition date. See. The goodwill of the subsidiary 3 million. Investment 75%, you take the value of non-controlling interest. So the total value that could have paid for the subsidiary 33 million. fair value of equity. අපිට දීලා තියෙන්නේ stated capital and retained earning. Actually, that is the book value of equity. Since you are not given any fair value adjustment, we can assume that book value equal to the fair value. Then the non-controlling interest, we have already calculated fair value of non-controlling interest at acquisition date. $6,000. Then the group retained earning, basically group retained earning include the retained earning of parent, alpha. So the retained earning of alpha and beta 31st March 2023, 25 million and 18 million. Alpha get 25 million. Beta, we need to take post acquisition from that 75%. Then beta get reserve again. Acquisition date එකට තිබ්බ reserve එක අපි goodwill calculation කරන්න use කරා. එහෙනම් ඊට පස්සේ වැඩි වෙන reserve වලින් තමයි 75 group එකට අයිති. You were given the retained earning of beta on 31st March 2023. අවුරුද්දකට පස්සේ beta ගේ තියෙනවා 18 million. Acquisition date it was 12 million. So the post acquisition period, retained earning of beta increased by 12 million from that 75%. 12 ඉඳලා 18 වලට 6 million increase. 75% IT group එකට. Balance 25% belongs to non-controlling interest. ඉතුරු 125 group එකට අයිති නෑ කියන්නේ non-controlling interest. $1,500. So we can have the non-controlling interest on 31st March 2023. The total. Then consolidated retained earning. 31st March 2023, 29,500. Now this is the goodwill calculated at acquisition. And this goodwill is subject to impairment. The goodwill is not depreciate or amortize. Instead, it will test for annual impairment. So if the impairment means if there's any write-off. So if no write-off given, same goodwill will continue. Right? The acquisition date එකේ තිබ්බ goodwill එක තමයි අවුරුද්දකට පස්සේ consolidated financial හදාද්දී තියෙන්නේ. So this is about the consolidated financial statement basic adjustments. Okay, any question? So we'll continue the discussion. එතකොට අපිට then 10th holiday 11 you have your SAB cricket faced or something, right? So you have that event. 18th, if possible, we will have. Otherwise, I'll try to make some alternative arrangement also, right? For the 18th. Then the 25th, we are meeting with the presentation. Right? The extra session arrangement එකක් ආවොත් අපි ඊට කලින් හම්බ වෙනවා. නැත්නම් කෙලින්ම ඊළඟට අපි meet වෙන්නේ the presentation date එක. After 2 weeks. Right? Presentation should be uploaded to LMS. I will create a link here prior to the presentation date. ඒ කියන්නේ 24 වෙනිදා රෑ 12 වෙනකොට PowerPoint ටික upload කරන්න ඕන LMS එකට. I will create a link there. Okay. So with that, I will wind up today's session. I have another SAB lecture at 12 o'clock, right? So we'll wind up today's session now. And if you have any further question, right, you can communicate me through your class representative, right? Or you can directly mail me, right? Okay. So with that, I'll give you the lunch break and you can have the evening session after the lunch break. Thank you.